Weak spots guides in World of Tanks with your host, Dangerously Incompetent. Today, the T-34-1, Chinese Tier 7 medium tank. Now this is also an up-gunned and up-turreted T-34, although they did heavily modify the hull to make it even lower, and they beefed up its armour somewhat. But this is really, when you say up-gunned and up-turreted, this really does up-turret from the T-34. And it's a very, very strong turret for a Tier 7, which is great when you have to face down Tier 9 heavies and tank destroyers. Guns bigger than T-34. Turret is totally changed, very rounded, very dome-like. Unless you're hitting it directly, there's all sorts of bouncingness going on and ricochets and yeah. No telegraph pole technology, but this turret on paper, 60 on the front. That's healthier than the 45 of the T-34. Still not great though. You wouldn't want to be shot in that by a Tier 7. And then in the flank, well, it's just weak. But that's a medium, isn't it? Turret, here we go. This is where the money is. This is where they spent the money on this tank. 170 mils of armour on the turret front. 170. 120 on the side. That's about the best you can get in a Tier 7 medium tank, I think, off the top of my head. No one beats that. But let's have a closer look through the 3D model. Let's have a look at the front. Hull. Well, there's 60 mils of armour, nicely sloped, so you can angle it nicely, bump it up a bit, but it's you don't want to try that against Tier 7s, maybe Tier 5s or Tier 6s. Yeah, you can get some bounces off that. Lower hull, 45. Don't expose that. Well, don't expose the whole hull, really. But if you can see that lower hull, lower plate, blam away at that. Because you're surely not getting through this. Look at that, 170. It's about as flat as you can get it. It gets down to 170. Everywhere else, 200, 600. Look at it, 400. You're just bouncing everything off this thing. So you wiggle your top around so they can't get the bit that's flattest to them. No, actually, no, that doesn't help, wiggling your turret, idiot. You'd have to move your tracks around. What about the mantlet? Is there a big hole under the mantlet? No, there is not. It's all nicely angled, and it pretty much covers everything. 150, 170, spaced, 170. The thinnest you get is about 150, and that's sharply angled. If you're looking at the front, if you're looking at the side, not so good. But from the front, Spang City. What about the couplers? Well, they're medium sized, they're hittable, close up with an accurate gun. That's still 120 mils, that's reasonable. And that's right in the middle of it. You stray a bit, it soon starts going up to Spang City. And the same on the other side. The ports in there, viewports in there, are no weaker. So if you're shooting this thing from the front, if you can't see that hull, well, yeah, couplers. Or there's that tiny bit of roof that's really thin, but that's tiny. Unless you're looking down on it from the top, then you're laughing again. And it is a short tank. It's not very high, so you've got to be careful coming up against those really big heavies, because they'll look down on the top of your turret, and if they can shoot you there, you're weak. Side. 50, 45 mils, sloped for 50 effective, all the way round. but it is nice and smooth, no snags, so you can side scrape, but it's going to have to be a very fine angle to get a bounce off anything with a decent gun. So if you can hit the side flat on, or even not very angled on, blam away at that. Otherwise, if you're stuck with the turret, don't shoot the front part. That's still quite effective, still quite heavy. The rear part is the thinner part. So the turret, couplers rather, they are no weaker than the rear half of the turret, so shoot it in the rear of the turret. And the absolute rear of the turret, 60, is pretty weak. Rear of the hull, even weaker. So if you can shoot it in the rear, lovely. If you can shoot it in the hull, lovely. If you can shoot it in the side rear part of the turret, you're okay. If this thing's gone hull down in a dip, it's not much good on the crest. It doesn't have much depression. But if all you can see is that front of that turret, you're stuffed. And that is what I call an up-turreted T-34. Because this thing can take hits from tier 9s. Up close and personal, and spang, spoon, not going through. Much better armour than that constructor rubbish. Here's the Chinese showing the Russians how it's done.